think
I mean,
that's generally the mindset that people are having. They have this there's a lot of unknowns in their life and their finances, and they're freaking out. And the last couple of days, I've seen like I don't know, 20 articles on why condos aren't selling, specifically in Florida. I don't agree with it.
no, there's one stat, and this was released by Florida Realtors in today's Wall Street Journal. Only 25% of the condos are in compliance with the new deadlines under the milestone and the Sears reports. So that's a big, if you're using your as-is contract and you're checking into the finances of the condo association, I think that would make any sane person hesitate.
Yeah, but that's not every condo. So that actually is a wonderful transition to my point. I think there's more transparency now than there ever has been when buying a Florida condo.
Well, I'm not saying there's not. I'm
No,
just saying,
but I think it's better today than it was 5 months ago, at the end of 2024. The end of 2024, we had the this deadline that was approaching for milestone and
right.
reserve studies. And we didn't know with a lot of these
Mhm.
condo associations what budgets were going to look like, what special assessments are
Right.
going to be passed. We were still waiting for milestone studies to come in until the last second. Well, you mentioned that 25% of the condos may still have something outstanding on, maybe it's the milestone, but
Right.
that means 75% of the condos, we know what we have. We know what we have.
No, the other way around. 75% of the condos, we don't know what we have. Only 25% we know.
Where's that data coming from?
Florida Realtors,
Florida,
some Mickey Mouse organization in the state of Florida, Florida Realtors.
can you look that up? Because I don't believe that's not what I was seeing. What does that say? Can you turn off your blur? Because it was impossible to see that.
Okay, how do I do that?
No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
It's page B6
All right,
of,
so why don't you read it to us? That's the Wall Street Journal one.
yeah. Oh, great. And I don't have my glasses. Let's see.
Well, I'll let you read it while I kind of spit out what I was thinking.
Sure, go ahead.
I think the condo laws have created more transparency, and I am not aware of 75% not being in compliance. Now, maybe not every condo has had to be in compliance yet. If they haven't hit the 30-year mark, then they're not going to need certain things. But generally, the condos that have had these reports, what incredible information that we have for these buyers. We know what the expectations are. And even if we look beyond that, so we look beyond just these new statutes that required the milestone and the reserve studies. Well, we had a couple of storms the last couple of years. We had Ian, Milton, Helene, maybe a couple others in certain other areas of the state. And that drove insurance. It drove a lot of a lot of cost on these condo owners. Well, that's all started to kind of plateau. We're starting to see this like normalization of cost. We're not in a huge high inflationary period. We're not in a rising interest rate environment, not necessarily. We are higher than we were 4 years ago, but we're actually better than we were 12 months ago in almost every aspect. Inflation is down, interest rates are down, more of our condos are in compliance with these statutes. Insurance after some of these storms has skyrocketed. It went up three, four, five-fold. That's all plateaued. Now it's starting to see it come back down, or even in the worst scenarios with some of these condos that are in real bad shape, the insurance is not continuing to go up. We now see, the 2023 insurance is similar to 24, which is similar than 25. So if I'm a buyer and I'm looking at properties in this area, I wouldn't be afraid to look at condos. We have more transparency than ever. Now, Dad, this article, what is the big point that they're making in the Wall Street Journal?
Well, the title is Florida Condo Owners Get Priced Out. And the subheading is Insurance Increases, Special Assessments, Limited Financing Options Add Pressure. and they refer to example, for example, a blacklist Fannie Mae has on condos they will not lend against, and it's 1,400 condos in the state. 20% of the condos in the country are in Florida. I'm just saying it's an article, okay? I'm not, other
So
than
the
that,
blacklist, let's talk about the blacklist. This is something that maybe people didn't realize, but it's always been the case. In order to get a mortgage, a conventional loan,
right,
you need to have it, you need to have a particular condo building needs to be approved and meet certain guidelines with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And across the country, there are a lot of condos that are not approved. And actually, you can go on Google,
right,
you can find a list of the condos that are approved under Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac guidelines. Those condos are a shoo-in for getting a mortgage because
right,
they know that they have the proper insurance, they have the proper reserves, they've been vetted, and they've been loaned on in the last 12 months.
right,
There are condos that have not gone through that process, either because, like in our market, people are paying cash, or maybe they went through something recently where they became out of compliance. They came out of compliance.
right.
You can actually you can go back into compliance, but it's risky. It's risky. And I hate the term blacklist. Some of the condos are definitely marked. They've got major problems. They refuse to get insurance, or the insurance they have isn't sufficient and the board won't change their policies. That's a problem. That's a problem for anyone that wants to get a mortgage. It's not necessarily a problem for someone who's paying cash. It could be a really good solution for someone who's paying cash. They might be able to get a better deal. They
If
might be able to negotiate a better deal because there are less buyers competing with them. Now, these are problems for sellers, and they might be problems for some buyers. But for the buyers that are qualified to do this without getting conventional financing, this is still a really wonderful opportunity for them. Uh,
so, what's your explanation on why the market is what it is then?
Yeah, so I think that people are still in shock. I don't think they've done the math. So if last year I was really worried about condos. I wasn't thrilled about, buying a condo because there were so many unknowns. We didn't know what the assessments were going to be after these reserve studies and milestone studies. We had dozens and dozens of deals where the first question was, hey, we haven't gotten the milestone report back yet. What do we do? And that's, I know how to deal with it in regards to how you evaluate and how you do your due diligence. I can still close, I can still get you clear title, but I can't guarantee what's going to be on that report. I can't guarantee what your costs are going to be going forward. I don't know if the roof needs to be replaced within 5 years or 10. And those studies were great for that. So we'll bring this fast forward. I think people are still in shock about condos. And this would be a perfect time to buy one if you found the right one. Dad, what is the Warren Buffett saying? When other people are fearful, be greedy. You remember
No,
that?
the New Jersey version is when there's blood in the street, that's the time to buy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that this could be one of those opportunities. Now, am I still worried about a condo that hasn't had a milestone study and a reserve study when they were supposed to have it? Yes. I would be worried about a condo that is not in compliance with Florida law or that has a milestone study that was really problematic and it's showing that they're going to have to replace pretty much everything. I would be worried about those. And the main reason that that's scary is you have no control. Mike York we had on this video, Dad, and he was incredible. You remember when he said if you get to a phase 2 study, he could basically bankrupt you?
Yeah, he
That's
could.
scary, right?
I,
But if we exclude looking at those buildings, just out of caution, just for this video, I'm not saying it might not be a good opportunity,
right.
but for purposes of this video, if I'm going to exclude those condos and just look at the ones that are in compliance, that I can review studies with, that I can look to see that they're properly financed, I, I think that's an opportunity.
I
That's a
would.
cool one.
You remember the show where we talked about the quickest I ever did a closing, and I told you about the Port Royal deal. It was listed for 8 million, and our client bought it for 6, closed in a couple of
Yeah,
days.
the big thing was timing on that one,
There
right?
was timing, and it was also the difference between what the seller was asking and what the buyer was offering. So there was a $2 million buffer. So if I were 20 years younger and I wanted to roll the dice on a condo, and it was listed for $1 million, I would seriously consider, okay, I'm going to offer 800, and I'll eat whatever special assessment comes. I have a $200,000 buffer. But to come in and offer a list, knowing some unknown figure is going to happen in the future, I don't have enough data.
Oh, I agree. And that's why last year condo sales were problematic because you
Yeah.
didn't even know how to guess on some of that stuff. But today, I don't think the market has caught up with the realities of some of these buildings. If you're in the right building and there are 50 listings,
Hmm.
they're competing there. It's like a race to the bottom. And for a buyer, that's a feeding frenzy. That would be incredible. Oh
I
my.
mean, also, again, looking at somebody, say my age, I'm my late
How
60s.
old are you, Dad? Oh,
I'm 108. Jesus used to cheat off my paper. But, I hope I don't go to hell for that. But if you have a retiree and they're not, say, earning anymore, and they have X dollars in the bank, the stock market has an emotional impact. I mean, the way my little brain works, there's the emotional portion of it, and then there's the analytical part. And the discipline is in having your analytical part override the emotional part, which is difficult.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but when you get to a certain point, if somebody's coming down here to retire, or they're getting ready to retire, they're in their 50s, and they want something 10 years from now that they can move to, leave New York or wherever. They're crunching numbers. They're working with a set pile of money they think they're going to have. They're making projections with their financial advisor, and they want to limit the number of contingencies that might exist, possibility.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
So,
so, to your point, Dad, I wrote some points down before we started this video.
right,
So, actually, this part I thought was interesting. Last year, we were guessing when you mentioned, $1 million condo and you offer 800 and you're taking
yeah,
a $200,000 gamble.
it's,
Today, we're not gambling. We're really not. We know what the special assessments need to be. We know what the issues are. This is an educated decision. It's an investment opportunity. In the past, you might have discovered these issues after closing, but now you're empowered to make fully informed decisions up front. This is the best case scenario for a condo buyer because I don't think the market has caught on to this yet. And yet you can make an informed decision. Now, if the seller has caught up to this and they're willing to just wait, they wait it out. I think, you're going to have to move on. That's probably not a deal you're going to get a great offer on. You might still have a good opportunity,
right.
but we're not talking about lowballing these sellers. We're talking about making an informed decision in buying a condo. Last year, it was really hard to make an informed decision. This year, it's actually much, much easier, much, much easier.
If they've done the reserve analysis, I would say.
Well, that's part of the information, right?
If
So
they've
if they haven't done
done,
that, then we know that that's you're still not informed. Now we know that's actually different information that maybe the board is more dysfunctional than we thought.
which kills me because of the increased liability on members of the board. Um,
Yeah, talk to me about that. You're worried about the oops, sorry. You were saying that it's crazy that boards wouldn't be more proactive about this, right?
right. I mean, all I've read is the liability and responsibilities on the board. It has increased. In some cases, they can be fined, and then maybe even civil proceedings. Uh, Beyond that, I'm not a condo specialist, but it's definitely more.
Yeah, they passed these sunshine laws last year and
Right.
in previous years, basically requiring more due diligence on behalf of the board, more training, more transparency, auditing. There's always been, in a sense, there's a fiduciary duty that the board has to the other members. And that seems to be enforced more and more with these new statutes. Some of the other points that I wrote down, we kind of talked about this as well, but motivated sellers create negotiating power. If sellers are competing against each other, that's an opportunity for a buyer to make a great offer. And now we know that it's an informed offer potentially. We still believe, and this is something that the article did not really address, in my opinion,
Hmm.
there's still long-term demand for Florida real estate. So in fact, they
Oh,
mentioned this couple that owned property in Punta Gorda, and that when they bought, everything was what was the phrase they used? Like surprisingly affordable, oh, wildly affordable. It was wildly affordable,
right.
which is great. And Punta Gorda is known for very affordable living and a wonderful boating opportunity and the beaches and all that. Well, that didn't change for this couple. They still loved it. It's just that they got priced out. Their insurance went up. The cost of living, the flights to get down here, they just kind of got squeezed. And that is unfortunate situation with, the last couple of years with inflation, with insurance, with all these other things. Living down here or owning down here has gotten more expensive. That is for real. But if you're a buyer with money and you're planning on making that investment, you know the cost. This is not going to be a surprise to you, and you should have a pretty predictable cost structure for at least the next couple of years. So Florida is still very attractive. Increased inventory means more choice, especially if you're looking at condos. I think single family homes are a lot more varied, but condos, you've got a floor plan and the same one. And so if you like the floor plan on the third floor, you might like it on the fifth floor as well. Opportunity to buy newer, safer buildings. So, Dad, you mentioned that there are buildings that haven't had these studies and are deficient in their compliance. Well, maybe this is the time for that seller to leave that building and find one that is in compliance, a board that is on top of it a little bit more. We mentioned insurance. I'm not seeing major insurance increases at this point. Maybe that'll change, but it's been pretty consistent ever since Ian, which was, when was Ian? End of 22. Um, Rental income. When people can't afford to buy or they're afraid to buy, they'll rent. They still want to come down here. Dad, you and I have seen that for the last 40 years.
Yeah.
Family coming down here, even if they can't afford it, they try and come down here. You remember any family that comes down here and,
We had somebody
they
who came
can't.
just the other day. They're using the tennis court right now. They're a neighbor.
You
They're from
mentioned
Boston. They're okay.
you mentioned interest rates, Dad, that interest rates are super high. They're not particularly high. 18 to 24 months ago, they were in the eights. We saw super high interest rates. Now
Right.
I did a loan, nothing special about it, at 6.5 yesterday. And that's a 30-year fixed rate. That's pretty reasonable, especially when you consider that you're going to maybe get a good deal on something like a condo.
Yeah, I'm just quoting an article in the Wall Street Journal, and most
Oh,
financial people read
you're
the.
liking my arguments, huh?
No, you're saying I'm saying it when I'm saying I read it in the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, well, I mean, some of it's true. I think there's just a spin. And to me, if we're in this real estate business, I see it and I eat it and I breathe it every day. I don't get it. I don't get why condos aren't selling more. Now, Nabor is going to be releasing more information about condos and single family homes. They recently had their first quarter report, and I
Right.
don't believe they've publicized it yet, but um, I don't know. I thought it looked pretty good. Single family and condo sales, they're about even from last year. They're really not that different. Pricing hasn't really, it's not statistically different. Number of sales is not statistically different. The only thing that's different is the amount of inventory. And that's causing this, I don't know, this sentiment that, nothing's selling, nothing's selling. I don't think that's true. I think we have the same number of buyers that we had last year, but a lot more sellers. And I can see that being a problem. We're basically spinning our wheels with a
I'm
lot
not
of clients.
bad. I mean, in 2009, when we had all the short sales, we had probably 13,000 listings. I mean, it
Well, I
was,
think that's context is key. I think that's really important to remember.
I mean, the market goes in cycles. It always has. If you're a good realtor, you're going to end up with a bigger market share because the newer realtors who aren't experienced may not last. I saw that with the title company. I mean, 08, 09, I can name companies that no longer exist that just didn't have, they weren't prepared for the downturn.
Yeah. So Sharon asked a great question. I love this question. It's kind of my point in doing this video. What is the agent's role and opportunity to inform and get ahead of these questions for buyers and sellers? Um, well, I think your opportunities are they're going to show themselves randomly when talking to a potential client, a neighbor, a friend, even a waitress at the restaurant. And you're not going to necessarily predict it. And maybe you're not posting videos like I am, but someone's going to mention, oh gosh, I read the article about condo sales this morning, like you did, Dad,
Yeah,
and it doesn't look so good. Well, here was my opportunity to say, I don't agree. I think this is the time. In fact, when I sent my email inviting people to this video this morning,
right.
I got a half a dozen emails saying, I love this topic. Yes, not enough people are saying it. There's more transparency now than there's been in decades with condos. In a sense, the rollout of this permit, or not permit, but the rollout of the milestone and structural integrity reserve studies, it was botched. It was a mess. Just understanding it and the time frames, what a pain. Just terrible. But the goal of it, I think, is wonderful. It's a wonderful goal that condos aren't going to be allowed to defer maintenance for years and years and years. They're not going to be able to hide it from potential buyers. It's going to be, we're going to study it, we're going to post it, we're going to be responsible to our members and to potential buyers. And if there's something bad about a condo, buyer's going to know about it, and we're going to negotiate in good faith about that. I mean, if it scares the buyer away, it's too bad, but it makes us all work in reality as opposed to kind of pretending that everything is fine. So, Sharon, I think that ultimately you're going to have an opportunity every day of the week if someone wants to put the brakes on buying something, buying a condo, even buying single family, because you can quickly say, "Oh, I actually disagree. I see it very differently. I think this is an incredible opportunity. I talk to my colleagues who have all these listings and they're not getting showing, so that could be a great opportunity for you." So I think that you're going to have these opportunities. You just have to believe it. If you don't believe it, I don't want you to say it. But if you do believe it, I want you to be armed with that information. I don't want you to be afraid to speak up. Kim mentions the media is our worst enemy. It can be. I mean, I can take the same article and I can spin it positive,
Yeah.
and maybe I'm wrong too. It's interesting. I would say if we're going to talk, about the problems that this market has, there are several. And this article and Dad, you brought them up as well. We have not gotten interest rates down enough. I would love to see them in the fives. That's what everyone was looking for. That would be great. And, I think over the next couple of years, they will get there. So that could, if we were to turn that negative, the positive is if you bought in today's market, your property will be worth more once rates come back down. That would be great. We talked with Chapman Insurance, who's a local insurance broker here. Jamin Eastman he's a friend and a really great insurance broker. He believes that Florida legislature have started putting into place things that will fix this market, this insurance market. It'll be slow, but they are already seeing some improvement. And building things to certain standards, new roofs, new windows, better foundation protection, it will drive insurance down.
Yeah, when it's all done, I think it'll be great.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying the article is necessarily perfect, but it does quote the governor of the state saying, yeah, we got a problem with the condo market, but legislature is going to try to do something to give relief to these people with these special assessments. That's a tiny part of it. I think it's an opportunity for realtors to target a particular association, and I don't want to name names, but you know the one that your grandparents would rent on Marco every year. I mean, somebody can come in and just get all those people who retired on a certain fixed income and get listings for their property, and look at the condo docs, and you know what percentage, what supermajority do you need to sell the whole thing to a developer? Because that place at some point it's beautiful, it's right on the water, but it's way too low. It's got what, you know, people got flooded in the last two hurricanes. Somebody's going to buy that just like they bought Snooks Inn and put some beautiful complex up there.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's things that happen when a condo isn't salvageable. There are these off ramps. We were involved on a closing for one of the original condominiums right on Gulf Shore Boulevard North, and it
right.
sold to a developer who tore it down. Now, not every condo is going to have that opportunity. Some condos are too nice for that,
Yeah,
and you want to just buy it for yourself as also as an investment. You want to be able to understand what the fees and the costs are going to be. You know,
right.
the blessing and the curse. And here's something that I've learned about myself. Dad, when I was working at the law firm in Atlanta, one thing that drove me crazy, and now that you've worked with me for a couple of years, you kind of probably understand this even better. I hated other people making decisions for me. It drove me crazy because all I could do was criticize it. You know, even if it was the greatest decision in the world, I could nitpick. Oh my gosh, why did they spend so much money? Why did they do it this way and not this other way?
Does your
Uh,
wife say to you, you just don't get along with anyone? Like your mother?
no, 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 my wife doesn't say.
See, it's all my fault at home. It's a
Well,
you.
the funny thing is, that was one that mindset, that personality of mine is one of the reasons I chose to come and move to Florida and work with you, Dad, is I wanted to be in control. I wanted to be able to
Yeah, I'm the
understand
same
and
way.
make decisions on my own. There's a downside to that. I can't blame anybody else. That was actually nice to be able to blame someone else.
I think pluses.
And I actually had to do the work as opposed to relying on someone else to do the work and make the decision. And that's exhausting. That creates decision fatigue. It's why, Dad, you invited me to come down here, is
Yeah,
that, it was like, gosh, I've been doing this for 40 years. This is brutal. Condos are, I think, very similar. Um, owning a single family home is a lot of work, and you have to do all the research and interview with all of the contractors and price it out and make sure no one's taking advantage of you, and you're going to make mistakes. Well, condos are the exact same. It's just that your board is doing it for you, and you can criticize the decision making. You can worry about what it's costing you, but it's like being an employee versus being a business owner. There are pros and cons to both. And now, fast forward in my position, I'd love it if someone else made decisions for me.
oh,
That'd
see,
be
I'm
great.
the opposite. I tell your mother there's no way in God's green earth I would ever live in a condo because one, there's meetings and I despise those. And two, you get the same situation where people are making decisions that I might disagree with.
Well, I'll tell you what's different. You do live in a condo. Do you know why?
Oh boy. Why? Because I do what my wife tells me, or
Yeah, that's exactly why. My mom is incredible. She runs that house. She deals with all the contractors, the technicians. She does all of that. Dad, when was the last time you paid the insurance bill?
I have been a
Like
check in
she's
40 years.
incredible. So you have a wonderful relationship where you guys can partner on that. But you may, at some point she might say, I don't want to do this anymore. Condos could be a great opportunity.
We're the perfect fit in that well, you asked this question actually, I think when you're like 15 years old. I don't know if you remember this. You asked your mother as she was serving chicken, if I remember, Mom, who's in charge? You or Dad? And your mother, without even hesitating, I'm in charge of everything your father doesn't care about, which is kind of how it works, honestly. The stuff she's good at, I'm lousy. And the stuff I'm good at, she has no interest in.
I think that the analogy is there with a condo. Is it perfect for everybody? No.
No.
Understand what you're good at, understand what you're not, what you want out of it. if you're coming down here a couple weeks a year and you just don't have the ability to manage something, condo could be incredible.
Yeah.
The problems that articles like this one are kind of pointing to is that there are certain people, there are condo owners that are not faring very well in this market. They are losing their investment. They can't afford the fees. And when they try and sell to bail themselves out of it, there's no buyers
I
because
was talking
people,
to a realtor yesterday, Christian, who's trying to sell a condo, her own condo, and she's not willing to back down on the price yet. So you get a certain subset of sellers who just, remember what it was worth last year, and then just not willing to accept the lower price.
sure,
So
sure. And that's a problem as well. But I have clients that it's not that their price is wrong. I believe that several of my clients I was looking at, I think their price is right. It's just that they have too much competition for the same buyer. So in other words, it's a race to the bottom. Whoever's going to go lower, maybe they'll sell, but not everyone's going to sell. There aren't enough
yeah.
buyers for the amount of listings that we have at the moment.
Well, and you also have clients like the gentleman you did the quick claim into his revocable trust for yesterday, who's just a very, very wealthy man. And he just adds the real estate to his portfolio, and he doesn't have to sell right now. He can hold and wait. And
Yeah. And that's why I say I think those people, it's going to be fine. This market, this moment that we are seeing, it is not a real estate problem. It's not. This is an economics problem, a finance problem, a Wall Street or Washington problem,
yes,
or even in our case, a Tallahassee problem. This is not a real estate issue. So unlike 2008, I believe our market will bounce really quickly and maybe even jarringly. Once people realize that it's not all like this, I think we'll have something. I
well,
think
I
we
agree
will.
with that 100%. People in my demographic, the baby boomers, they want to retire. And having traveled so much recently, been up in Massachusetts, going to New York next weekend, I go up there and there's no way I'd want to live there anymore. Massachusetts is not like it was when I grew up there. New York's nothing like when I would go since I was like 10 years old. Even visiting your brother in Georgia, that's, he loves it. It's not my cup of tea. Um, you
Well,
know,
I think we had a couple of viewers speak to that. I think first and foremost, know what you like. Single family and condos. Generally, if both were in the same location, single family is more expensive. So I understand the reason to go to condo. One of the benefits of condos is that someone else is going to control the maintenance and
right.
keep the place going on your behalf. Whereas the single family, no one's going to do that. With the condo, the downside is you don't have control. You really don't have a lot of control, but right now is a sweet spot potentially. With single family, you have all the control, and so it's just pluses and minuses with both of that.
I'd be curious if realtors are seeing sellers back down on their prices, because then
Yeah.
the people will find the blood in the street and take advantage.
Yep. So, Mike, you have offered a great question. You asked about some of my other YouTube videos. They're all on YouTube, every single one of them. I think I've got 250 videos up there now, including the one that you're referencing on the milestone inspections and the Sears studies, and then the turnover report. I actually did one. It was very recently that
That
I
was
did it.
really that one. I've watched that myself a couple of times.
I think they messed up the name. Honestly, I think that's the biggest problem with this stuff. They
Oh,
messed up the name. The
sales,
milestone study is a structural study. Why did they call the reserve study a structural study? I don't get that. Why
yeah.
they messed up the name. So the milestone that tells us what's broken and when does it need to be fixed. And then the reserve study says, how are we going to afford it?
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that.
So youtube.com/Christian Ross. All the videos are up there. I'm going to post this one either later today or tomorrow. But if you guys have other topics or if you want to talk about something specifically, feel free to call. We'd love to help. Dad, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye, guys.